Okay, it's 12. So actually, good afternoon. The day's already flying by so quickly. But welcome. My name is Alex Rodriguez. I'm one of the support staff here at SIFPAC. Welcome to our 2024 Fall Mixer for Scaling for Success, our supplier development tools, for farms and food businesses and farmers and just other, just support staff with for capacity building for food businesses. We're hosted by the GFPI team. The GFPI team and a Good Food Purchasing Initiative is pretty much, working alongside all of you all and our partners and other orgs, just again supporting our Chicagoland food systems and making it more equitable and being transparent with local, sustainable, fair, humane, and nutritious food, and just thinking of ways that we can kind of collaborate and be able to bring that up front. Our work obviously includes a lot of shifting institutional procurement due to Good Food Purchasing Program, and also uplifting our suppliers with resources such as events like this. But you are currently in nutrition labeling with featuring our Mary Mora at Real Foods Collective. And if you have any questions, feel free to use the QA and the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on it. And then if you have any questions, then it's going to be a smaller group. So definitely, hop in if you can. But I will pass it over to Mary.
Thank you, Alex. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Can you all hear me okay? Volume's okay, Alex? Okay. Thank you, Samantha. Um, I will share my screen. Um, all right, you can see my screen okay?
We can see your
I just,
screen. Yes.
okay, I just can't see you all, which makes me a little bit nervous, which is what I kind of want to do in the beginning, get to know each other a little bit. If you are on um, Zoom, if you wouldn't mind just saying hello, where you're from, what organization you're from, and if you have any specific questions or challenges regarding nutrition labeling. Anybody?
Hi,
No?
I'm Samantha. I'm from Real Foods Collective.
Hey, Samantha. I see
Oh,
Bernardo too from my team.
I don't have any questions, but I'm excited to be here today. Thank you, Mary.
Okay, thanks. And oh, Ileana?
Hi, I'm Eliana. You pronounced my name correctly. That's always exciting. I have a small mushroom business, Rogers Park Mushroom Club. I am very, very new to growing and selling, so don't have questions, just here to learn.
Cool. Thank you. We'll have to exchange information before the end. I will share a little bit about myself and our organization. Um, if you have any questions, since this is such a small group, please just come off mute, ask away, put in the chat. Bernardo's on my team. I don't know if he wants to introduce yourself and Ash T. If not, that's okay too. Hi, I'm person with the, oh no, you lost your voice. It's the season, right? But I am from B&R Gardens. I'm a grower and run a small food business. Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Do you have any specific questions or challenges that you've found with nutrition labeling? If you think of them, you can just chat them in, okay? All right, I am going to pull up our slides, and since this is such a small group, feel free to let me know if you have any questions. I can't even see the panel of who's on, so just come off of mute and interrupt me if you can. Sammy, if you happen to see anybody who chats, can you please give me a heads up?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go over the basic history of nutrition labels, the basics about the nutrition label, the importance of the nutrition label, and the health impacts. We're going to get into a little bit about the USDA and FDA regulations, and then hopefully this will help you decide if you need a label. I will be very honest, this is a very confusing topic. So we have lots of resources and guidelines, and we'll talk about how you can apply this information to your session at the end. We already did introduction, so thanks everybody for joining and sharing a little bit about me. My name is Mary Mora. I am a registered dietitian and also a certified diabetes care and education specialist. So I specialize in teaching people about how to take care of their diabetes. Also, trained chef, so really trying to help people make and eat their foods that are really good for their bodies. So also the co-founder and director of Real Foods Collective. We're a small 501c3 nonprofit business in Maywood, Illinois. And really what we're trying to do is create economic opportunity by mobilizing the power of food, community, and connection. And there is our team at the bottom at a really super fun event on Thursday. And I have to give a shout out to Sammy and Maisha, especially helping me with this presentation. They're both graduates of nutrition dietetic internship, so they've really helped me with this presentation. All right, so if we get into the history, it actually goes way back to the early 1930s when people were starting to be concerned about what was in their food. It wasn't until 1990 that the Nutrition Labeling and Education Act came about. Before that, nutrition information wasn't always required on packaged foods and beverages. However, people started to become more interested in it. In the first Back in 1993, added dietary saturated fat and dietary cholesterol were started to gain more notoriety, more evidence in the harmful effects it has on the body. And in 1993, serving sizes were also established. So we're going to get a little bit more into the label and talk about what serving sizes are and why they're important. And then in 1994, the first U.S. nutrition facts label actually appeared. It has changed over time and it continues to change. And so we're going to go through some of those changes. What are the requirements for small businesses and what are kind of the added benefits of including a nutrition label on your food? So in 2006, trans fats were added to the nutrition facts label because of the detrimental effect they have on heart health. A lot of restaurants and food producers actually started to ban trans fats being added into the foods. And so it is added onto the label so that people will know if they're having any trans fats in their diets. And basically, what trans fats are is they transform the chemical structure of fats to become more solid at room temperature. These are added to foods to prolong the shelf life. So that is, if you think about sweets or crackers that can sit on the shelf for months and months and months, they might have trans fats in them. In 2023, the final rule for gluten-free was added and again required that if a product contains gluten, it must be added to the label. In 2016, the FDA did update the requirements for the nutrition facts label, and that was due to help reflect updated scientific information. They were trying to figure out how can the food label be helpful and easy for people to read. So if you look at the two labels on this slide, we have the original label on the left, the new label on the right. This is important to help people differentiate how their food affects their diet and management or prevention of chronic diseases. So the new label is supposed to make it easier for consumers to make informed choices. The updated label, like I said, makes it easier for consumers to make the choices. And this didn't just happen overnight. And the rate at which the organizations had to change the label were really dependent on their annual sales. If a manufacturer had $10 million or more in annual sales, they were required to update their labels by January 1st, 2020. And if they have less than $10 million in annual sales, they got an extra year till January 1st, 2021. So it wasn't like everything changed right away. They took a long time to really get the information that they needed to ensure that the labels were accurate, which is one thing that is important, and we'll get into a little bit more. So when we think about the food label, does anybody here use the food label or look at it? Is there anything that you look at? Feel free to chat or chime in. Or if you have any questions about the label, we're going to go over it. But it is, like I said, intended to help people make better choices to manage their diet and their health. And I can't see if there's anything in the chat at all.
I put yes, but I know for me, like, there's unfortunately like heart disease in my family, so it's like looking at the sodium. But I think sometimes too, I have to like remind me, like, I have to like Google like what is recommended. So it's like also extra steps to understand what I'm looking at.
Right, right. There's so much information on the label. Thanks for sharing. So I should go to the next slide, and then we'll go back to the other one. But this is a basic nutrition fact label, and the most important thing is to figure out what is the most important thing on the label. I think was that Alex that said there's heart disease running in her family. So she's going to look at certain nutrients that somebody with diabetes that are different than somebody with diabetes might look at. So the first thing to know and determine is what is the serving size. So when we're talking to people about serving sizes, it's the facts label are changing to actually show what is a usual or actual serving versus what's recommended. So that can cause a little bit of confusion right there. But if we have a package of food and there's 4 servings per container, it means there's 4 cups of this food. If you take your measuring cup and measure out 1 cup of this food, the information on the nutrition facts label is what you're going to get out of that 1 cup serving. If you eat the whole container, which may or may not happen, it would be 4 times all of the information. So instead of the 280 calories that we think we're eating, we're actually getting 1,120 calories. So that's the way the serving size, serving per container works. You can see the calories. That's our basic information about energy, how much we eat versus how much we expend. So depending on what your personal goals are, you want to maintain your calories. Some people may be trying to gain weight. They're going to want more calories than they spend. You're trying to lose weight. You're going to have less calories than you expend. And so the label helps people track that. The next thing you can look at is the percent daily value. And this is a little bit more difficult, in my opinion, to understand, but it basically tells you what percentage of a nutrient is included in that one serving or an average diet. And FDA, USDA has decided an average diet is about 2,000 calories. That doesn't mean that everybody needs 2,000 calories to maintain, gain, or lose weight, but that is what the daily value is based on. So if you are looking at your saturated fat and trans fat, if you eat 1 cup of this food, you're going to get 23% of your saturated fat for the of needs that are for the day. It's recommended to have less than 10% of your total calories from saturated fat. So you can see that there's 23%. This is a higher saturated fat item. We're never going to say don't eat it, foods are not good or bad, but it's having the information to know how to choose and balance the foods that you eat. Okay, so you can see there's no trans fat in this food, and I honestly don't even know what this food is, but the saturated fat is a little bit high. The cholesterol comes in milligrams and then shows the percent daily value. Same with sodium, total carbohydrates, and protein. You can see there are the four vitamins and minerals that are required for the nutrition facts label and the daily value percent underneath that heavy line. You can add more if you want, which we'll talk about in a little bit. One thing I do want to talk about the label, where you see total carbohydrates, 34 grams, that's, again, if you have 1 cup of whatever food this is, you're getting 34 grams of carbohydrates. And that includes dietary fiber, total sugars, and added sugars. And the added sugars piece was newly added recently as research was showing that people's weight was being affected by the amount of added sugars that we're eating. We get a lot of added sugars from our sugar sweetened beverages, sweets, pastries, those types of foods. And so you don't look at a bottle of soda and see white table sugar, but essentially it's the added sugars that we don't see that can add up. Any questions so far? It's a lot of information, and that was just kind of the basic overview. All right, if we go back to the health impact slide, we know that we as Americans we're doing okay, but we have a lot of work to go. So the dietary guidelines for Americans is basically the recommendations provided by USDA and FDA for everybody to follow as they're eating. These dietary guidelines are general recommendations and can be and need to be individualized based on every different person's culture, religion, preferences, upbringing, resources. There's so much to think about when we think about how and why we choose our foods. And so that is why the label helps put those recommendations and guidelines into practice and is a usable tool for people. The U.S. Dietary intakes and recommendations show that 75% of people are not eating enough vegetables, fruits, and dairy. 63% exceed the limit for added sugars, 77% exceed the limit for saturated fat, and 90% exceed the chronic disease risk reduction limits for sodium. So again, when we think about sodium, what disease states do we think about? Or what comes to mind? I don't know if anyone's chatting. But high blood pressure. When we think about saturated fat, again, heart disease, added sugars really affects everything. Heart disease, obesity, diabetes. And for people who aren't eating enough fruits, vegetables, and dairy products, that is going to affect our health at every stage of life. Imagine when teens are building their bones, the most impactful time of bone development is the teenage years. And we know that teenagers are not consuming enough dairy products, which is high in that calcium needed to help support healthy bones. Diets low in fruits and vegetables. Again, if you're not getting fruits and vegetables, you might not be getting enough fiber in your diet, which could lead to a whole array of issues, including different types of cancer like colon cancer. So this is why the label is so important, and I'm happy to go through if anybody has specific questions about the label or wants to know a little bit more about the health impacts, because FDA and USDA have really made a commitment to try and make the labels easier to read so that people can use them to help support their health journey. Okay, so what foods require food labels? You might see, you might go to a farmer's market and buy something that doesn't have a label, or you may see a label on, a pack of gum or whatever you're normally eating. But there are specific recommendations and guidelines for foods that require labels. Most prepared foods require labels. Breads, cereals, canned and frozen foods, snacks, desserts, drinks, um, gum, things like that. Raw produce, so your fruits and vegetables and fish, does not require food labels. And I'll share some resources because it is important to have the nutrition information, especially if you're selling it, if people have questions. Ground and chopped meats, major cuts of meats, require food labels, but not if you buy something at the deli counter. The FDA does enforce regulatory requirements of critical foods, meaning these foods do require food labels. So infant formulas, medical foods like tube feedings or medical shakes, they do require food labels. Has anybody ever seen a nutrition claim on a label? This can say that it is, and this can say that it is like high, rich in, excellent source of different vitamins or minerals. It may say it's a good source, contains or provides, and that usually means that it contains 10 to 19% of the daily value. That is that based on that 2,000 calorie diet. More fortified, enriched, added, extra, or plus means that there's 10% or more of the daily value. So those are, food labels may show that if you've ever seen orange juice with calcium added to it, oranges are not a normally high source of calcium, so they're fortifying it, making it a functional food. So it may say that it's fortified and have 10% or more of the daily value for calcium. It can only be used for vitamins, minerals, protein, dietary fiber, and potassium. So this is though where we have to be careful what the nutrition claim says and what is actually included in the food. So if you look at the Arizona tea in the middle, the picture with the purple can, and again, I'm not picking on any specific brands. I have to put out that disclaimer. No one's paying me to talk about the different brands or knock the different brands. I just found some images that I thought might be interesting to discuss. There's pictures of fruit on the front. I think it says vitamin C fortified. And it also says fruit juice cocktail.
Mary,
So it looks, yeah,
really quickly, are you sharing your slides? Or no?
yeah, you can't see
Okay.
them.
No, we can't see them.
I can
Okay.
Oh
see
my
the
gosh.
slides. I don't know.
I can see them.
Oh, okay. Might just be my end then. Okay.
Oh, I'm like, oh no. Can you see them now?
I cannot, but continue. Go ahead. If
Should
they
I,
could see them, go ahead.
here, let me try this again.
Stop sharing.
Stop sharing.
Escape. Go back to the actual presentation.
Sorry, everyone.
Go back to share slide. Go back to share computer, share screen. And we're gonna see do window. Go
This
to,
one?
Yep.
How about now?
Yeah, just go to presentation and then
Sorry, everyone.
Can you see now?
yes, but it's just like I can see your notes. So it's like if you go in presenter mode, then we should be fine.
Oh, how do I do that?
Give me a second. Hit escape.
Sorry.
Slideshow.
Presenter view. This is so embarrassing. I'm sorry.
No, go from current slide. Go ahead. Press that.
That's better right now.
No. Press from current slide up above.
Yep, on current slide.
That's better.
No.
No, we can still see the whole.
Okay,
Oh my
hit
gosh.
escape.
I'm so sorry, everyone.
Click this. Not automatic.
Is that better?
No.
My gosh, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Well, if you all are okay with it, we can just hide my notes. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thanks everyone. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Sidebar, I'm using somebody else's computer because my screen shattered this weekend, so I apologize. All right, so
Mary,
where we at?
you're still not sharing the PowerPoint screen at all anymore.
Okay. Share screen.
Should we do this one?
No, that's the computer in itself.
There
Is
you
that
go.
working?
Yeah.
Should we try and show
All
it
good.
as,
You're good.
try and show it as a slideshow? Or just leave it
Try
this
one more
way?
time.
I'm sorry?
Maybe try it one more time, and if it doesn't work, continue.
Okay. How about now?
No, it didn't work. So maybe just.
Yeah, go ahead and continue. You're good.
Okay, sorry, everyone.
You're good. Go ahead.
Oh, wait, here we go.
Go to show presenter view on yours. So what can you guys see now?
Just
Can
the
you see?
whole PowerPoint screen, but your notes
Okay.
are in, so maybe just continue with that.
All right, we'll just do it this way. Sorry, everyone. Okay. So again, back to the nutrition claims. There can also, if you ever see the word low, if it's something is, for example, low calories, it's 40 calories or less per serving. Low cholesterol, 20 milligrams or less per serving. So there's all these specific guidelines that you have to follow if you are adding a nutrition claim. The labels, for any label that is on a product, it must include the mandatory nutrients. So let's first go back to let's go to the right side first. So we've got you must have the serving size, the household measure, common household unit. So again, if you're using a cup, if it's an ounce or pound or weight, that needs to be included per serving. How many servings are on the per container? The ingredient statement, an allergen declaration, which we'll talk about in the next couple slides, name, address of the manufacturer, packer, or distributor, and then those mandatory nutrients that we talked about, the total calories, fat, saturated fat, trans fat, cholesterol, sodium, total carbohydrate, dietary fiber, total sugars, added sugars, protein, vitamin D, iron, and potassium, sorry. Oh, somebody's in the waiting room. These next few packaging elements are not necessary, but they can be added. So those nutrient content claims that we talked about, things that say they're high in something, rich in something, good source of, can be added, but they are not required. You can add a barcode for point of sale operations and the best before expiration or sell by date. So the next thing we're going to talk a little bit about is the food allergies and intolerances. So a food allergy must be added on the foods label. There are 9 major food allergens, and if they are included in the food or any source of them is included, they must be on the label. So the major allergens are milk or milk products, eggs, fish, crustacean shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, soybeans, and sesame. So if your product has any of these foods included, they must be labeled. And there's 2 ways that you can label the allergens. You can see in the second picture, example 1, if it has whey protein, which is basically contains milk, lecithin, which is basically soy, cherry, sugar, natural flavors, almond, which is a tree nut, and salt, it must be labeled. However, if you look at example 2, it really shows how that the food allergens are highlighted. So if example 2 didn't say contains milk, soy, or almond, you might not know that whey protein is part of milk, or lecithin and soy are the same thing, or almonds and tree nuts are the same thing. So you have to be careful if you are manufacturing in somewhere that is also, your product may not have nuts in it, but if it does not, but you are manufacturing somewhere that does have nuts, you also need to add that onto the label too. And there's a link to the Food Allergen Labeling and Consumer Protection Act in the resources. I'm pretty sure, if not, I'll add it, but it's going to give you the specific guidelines for how you are producing and what you need to add for allergens, but those 9 must be labeled if they are included. And I'm a mom of a son with allergies, so it is really important that people know if the food is contained in the food that they're consuming, because it could be a matter of life and death. The difference, one thing I did want to touch on, an allergy is when your body produces an antibody to a specific food, and that can happen at any time. A food intolerance means that your body's not necessarily producing antibodies, but your body cannot break it down for whatever reason. So you may have heard of people who are lactose intolerant. That means they get symptoms of stomach issues and gastrointestinal distress if they consume any type of lactose. Lactose is the natural occurring sugar found in milk. So if somebody is lactose intolerant, they may have gas, bloating, diarrhea, cramps, constipation if they have any kind of dairy product. The interesting thing about intolerances is that, well, specifically lactose intolerance, is that it can change over ages. As you get older, your body may produce more or less enzymes to break down that lactose. Another example of a food intolerance is celiac disease. It's not necessarily an allergy, but somebody cannot tolerate the proteins found in wheat or gluten. Okay. So when we're looking at labels, one thing I wanted to bring up, and there is a link to this information in the resources page, is that there are very specific format guidelines. So I just took a screenshot of one of the labels and the typeface that is necessary. You can see there's specific font size, specific fonts you can use, and how big the labels should be. So again, we're going to talk about some resources where you can get free labels, make them yourself, or hire a company to develop them for you. But if you are making them yourself, I would definitely make sure you're complying with the formats that are required. One thing I wanted to share, and I don't think anybody on this call right now is producing meat, poultry, or egg products, but if you are, the FSIS guidelines for label approval is a really helpful guide to determine basically whether your label must be submitted for approval. There are a lot of guidelines. So I just wanted to share that label. If you are a meat, poultry, or egg producer, this was just updated in March 2024. And basically, the key takeaways from this document talks about the need to evaluate 3 types of labels before you can be exempt or use them in commerce. So if there are religious exemptions, labels with statements or specific claims, or labels that need temporary approval. So I would check that out if you need it. So one question that I know seems confusing, and it kind of is do you need to use a food label? They are required. The question is, are they regulated? So not always. Small businesses can qualify for a labeling exemption if you are within the specific guidelines that allow an exemption. So if you're making low volume products, so if you employ less than 100 FTE employees and you're selling fewer than 100,000 units of product over 12-month period, you are eligible for the labeling exemption. If you are going for the labeling exemption, you must file an annual notice with the FDA, and we'll take a look at what that form looks like. If your low volume product does include a nutrition claim, however, you do not qualify for the exemption. So that's one way to get out of having the nutrition label. However, it's always going to be recommended that you have it. If your annual gross sales are less than $500,000, or your annual gross sales of food or supplements are less than $50,000, you do not need to file with the FDA. So here's an example of the exemption form. There is a paper form that you can fill out, and they're very specific in that you have to apply for the exemption every year. There is an online web-based application that you can just get a password for and enter all the information online, and then you can apply for the exemption from the food labels. There are some free nutrition label generators that we found online, foodlabelmaker.com, onlinelabels.com. I'm sure you can definitely Google or search for free nutrition facts labels. I even saw some on Canva. They have templates. However, we're going to talk in the next slide a little bit about what a dietitian can do to help to ensure that your label is accurate. There's a certain small percentage of room for error. So we have to be careful that when you are making your labels, you're inputting your standardized recipe in the exact amounts that you're using for each product, and also using the exact ingredients that the product entails. So if you have questions, I'm always going to recommend a dietitian to help with looking at your nutrition fact labels, ensuring they're accurate. They can help create marketing materials, calculate and display different changes that may occur as you change your recipe. If you are scaling a recipe, sometimes you may be making something to sell, and there are different ingredients that are not available. Hopefully you're using standardized recipes, because that's a whole nother topic that we could talk about for a while. But another thing that a dietitian can do is help assess the nutrient content claims and make sure that they're accurate in meeting those specific guidelines that are required for the food labels. So a couple final tips and takeaways is that each business and each food item is different. And I know we're based out of Illinois, however, each state may have different and specific requirements. So I would highly suggest contacting your state public health department to make sure that you're abiding by all of the necessary guidelines that are required within the state. One, I can't stress this enough. If you have questions, contact Ask FSIS at the USDA. They actually answer. I've been emailing back and forth with them for a month with questions to try and get this presentation together, because it is confusing. And I am not going to lie, the more I look for specific guidelines and takeaways, the more confused I get, to be honest. However, every question that I've asked, they've answered, and if they don't have an answer, they've asked for clarification. So that is going to be my one big takeaway. If you have a question, if you're not sure if you're exempt, if you are exempt, they're really actually helpful. It takes a couple of days, but I can't stress that enough. You can obviously search for businesses that specialize in nutrition label development and support. Trustwell is one that I found. They have a lot of really great information on their website. Also, infographics and help with rounding different nutrients. So that is one that I would take a look at, but I'm sure there are more out there. And then I will send out this resource list. If you have, basically, you can check out any additional information that you might need. Government resources to consult, some links, and then there is my contact information if anybody has questions. Or, sorry, I don't know why this is like, can't see it. But it's just Mary at Real Foods Collective and www.realfoodscollective.org. If we can help you out with anything, or if you have any specific questions we can help you out with, we're happy to, especially in regards to nutrition education. But I really can't stress that contacting that USDA email enough to get your specific questions answered. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
It's Eliana. Thank you so much for the presentation. This was super helpful. Perhaps I missed it. I feel curious about where tinctures may fall in terms of labeling, or like quasi-medicinal byproducts of, I guess, specifically for us mushrooms.
Yeah,
The categories. Yeah.
that's a really good question. And I would think that they would fall under the supplement guidelines, which I can put the link to that. But again, they're not really regulated. So I think you would have to look at your business size also. I think, I don't know, does anybody else on the call have ideas or thoughts about tinctures? I would say, I haven't honestly, in all the research, that has not come up. Like, I've not seen that word in any of the guidelines. But I would probably think it falls within the guidelines of supplements.
Gotcha.
Mhm. Any other questions?